This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Brandon Andrus Green.
Welcome to the Good Neighbor Podcast Live. What does local leadership look like when a growing city faces difficult choices? One good neighbor may be closer than you think. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing a dear friend and the mayor of Norman, Mayor Stephen Tyler Holman of Norman, Oklahoma. Mayor Holman, how's it going?
Very good, very good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited for the guests to learn all about you and what all has been going on. I know that your family roots in Norman go back several generations. How does knowing the city that personally shape the way you lead it?
Yeah, so my great grandfather Charlie originally came to Norman and owned a store, a shoe and saddle shop on Main Street in downtown Norman when my dad was a kid. And so my dad grew up running up and down Main Street. And then my grandpa, Bill Holman, he worked at Griffin Central State Hospital here in Norman, which is a state mental institution. And he worked there for 42 years and retired from there. And then my dad worked there also for a while when I was a kid. But all four generations spent most of our life in Norman. And then my dad and I both grew up and have lived here pretty much our entire lives. And so um, the perspective of growing up in a place and having seen it evolve over time, and now over several decades, and having gone to the schools here, gone to the parks here, learned to drive here, having experiences with the police department, or having friends that have had experiences with the police department. All those types of things definitely shape how I um, serve in my role as mayor of Norman and how I go about trying to work with others and address the big issues that we have here that we're dealing with.
You became interested in local government while you were still young and later served 6 terms on the city council.
Yeah.
What kept pulling you back into public service year after year?
Well, being directly involved in the city planning process, and being ideally being able to be directly involved in improving services or improving how the city looks, or how a facility works, things like that. Being able to make difference in the everyday life of people. A lot of folks get really focused on the national and state politics and the hyper partisanship and Republicans and Democrats and big global national issues, and don't usually pay as much of attention to the everyday little issues. Sometimes they aren't very little, they can actually be pretty big, but everyday issues that we all deal with when the moment you leave your house, even when you're not leaving your house, you live in a neighborhood. Your neighborhood may be next to something. It's an empty lot, but there's a data center proposed next to it,
Mm.
or a big car dealership with big lights that are going to shine in your backyard, or a big apartment complex, or something like that, or a Walmart. So even if you're in your house, there's issues that are day to day, everyday things that could impact you. But when you're driving on the streets, if you're walking on the sidewalk, if you go to a park, if you're drinking municipal tap water, if you're flushing the toilet, all of those things can be a matter of municipal government and impact you. And so for me, being involved in those day-to-day things, and ideally trying to improve those things, is in the town that I grew up in, has been really what I've found to be the calling, is growing up here and being able to have a direct hand and hopefully making it a better, community to grow up in than it was when I was growing up here.
Yeah, it seems like a dream come true. I remember when you were young, working in city council, and even years prior to that, it was always a dream of yours to someday be the mayor of Norman. And now you're Mayor Holman. I know that's it's a
Yeah,
big deal.
I would get asked about it a lot because the longer I served on city council, the more I would get asked. But I served with four different mayors during my time as a council member, and I served the first mayor I served with was the mayor for 9 years, and she served 3 terms and then didn't run again. And she was a university professor, and she retired and moved away. And then the second mayor I served with was a retired school teacher and principal here in Norman that served on the city council with me, and then she only served 1 term and didn't run again. She was already in her 70s at that point, and so. And then the third mayor I served with, Bria Clark, her and I, the three of us are similar in age. I'd say she's one of the younger mayors that we've had, and she was the mayor during COVID and all the lockdowns and masks and all different sorts of things that were going on during that time. So that was a pretty challenging time to be mayor. She ran for reelection 2 year in 2022 and lost reelection. And so, and then the fourth mayor I served with was a retired Navy vet and former emergency management person for the city of Norman. And anyway, he ran and against the former mayor and won. And then I ran against him and won. So um, yeah, it's been serving with four different people with four different personalities, definitely different backgrounds and different opinions and viewpoints politically, and how they think the direction Norman should go. I found that to be really helpful, though, to work with them. But I would get asked about them, and the first three were not. I didn't agree with everything on every item with them, but mostly enough that I didn't feel like I would run against them. But the last one, he and I had some pretty significant differences on issues impacting Norman, and we had a good professional relationship, and the campaign was pretty clean, at least on my part. And so, and I think on his part too, there were some of his supporters, I think, that were doing some things. But anyway, I ended up winning by a pretty significant amount in that election. But so I kind of just always thought if it ever felt like the right time and people really were behind it and wanted me to do it, that I would have an interest, and everything kind of aligned at the right time, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I know that most residents only see the final vote or headline. What part of leading a city happens behind the scenes that people like me rarely understand?
Yeah, there's a lot of meetings. All the official city meetings are public, so most of the public can follow along pretty closely. But um, and then there's one-on-one meetings with residents throughout the city who have a particular issue that's going on in their neighborhood or their particular property, dealing with zoning and what's allowed on the property, or some nuisance issue that can't get resolved or something like that, or there's an upcoming development project that they are either supportive of or concerned about. And so there's a lot of, and those are just individuals. And then there's ribbon cuttings for new businesses, or groundbreaking for a new business or a new project or a new city thing. Or earlier I was touring Crossroads Youth and Family Services, which deals with youth that are trying to keep them out of the justice system, but may have had to be taken from their families by DHS, or yeah. So going and touring that facility in Norman and talking to the people that operate it. And, so there's a lot of that, just a lot of communication and one-on-one interaction, hearing about all the different things that are going on. And then we have to, be in public meetings that are on a record and televised, and we have to take votes that can sometimes be very challenging. Last night we approved a rezoning for our new homeless shelter that uh, calling it a rehousing hub, because that's the main goal of it, is give people a place to sleep and get them off the street. But the goal is not to just warehouse people in a big room with bunk beds. It's how can we get people out of this situation as fast as possible and into housing, and so and or treatment services, whatever it may be. And so we had to vote on a rezoning for the piece of property that voters approved funding to build a new shelter on. And it's near a neighborhood, so there were folks that had, things to say about that in support and opposition. And then, the city of Norman's budget is about $300 million. We have about 1,000 city employees, and so and then a major university here, and being the third largest city in the state, and close to Oklahoma City, and a growing area. So there's just a lot of things that go into it, a lot of, I think, thought and consideration for issues. And I've served with over 40 council members, and 7 new council members just in the last year alone, out of 9 total people. So there's a pretty decent turnover, and it only pays $100 a month. So a lot goes into it if you're doing it right, and it can be pretty stressful. And you're dealing with stressful issues that are complicated. And sometimes, let's get out of here, cat. Uh, and so there's a lot that goes on behind. I often say if you wait, to come to the final council meeting when they're voting, you've missed a lot of the process that went into an item being on that agenda for to even be voted on in the first place. So, and that can be
I know.
difficult for anybody in the general public to stay up to abreast with. So,
Right. And like you mentioned, local leadership often means making a decision knowing that somebody will strongly disagree with that. How have you found that you can listen seriously without allowing those disagreements to kind of paralyze the work?
yeah, that can be a challenge. It's gotten more challenging in recent years with social media and hyper partisanship, and now AI generated content. A lot of folks are having a hard time discerning what is really happening and what is fake. And There's a lot of folks that really do not know what is really going on, like with a city issue or a project, and have a lot of assumptions about it, but don't know anything. But social media allows all sorts of stories to spread and things like that. And then people are upset about things that are not even a thing, or are easily fixable. And so, and then also online definitely seems to allow people to say things and act a way that they wouldn't in person, most likely. And dehumanizing, and the fact that I'm not talking to a person, I'm talking to a screen and a keyboard, so I can say whatever I want to that person, and
Right.
act anyway. And so anyway, it can be a real challenge, and especially with city issues, because it's often dealing with people's personal space and their private property, their house, their business, their kids' school, things like that. And you can get people that can be very passionate. Right now, there's a proposed turnpike in Norman that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is wanting to put through Norman, 2 of them actually. And they both would, require the acquisition of a couple hundred properties by force, against people's will, using eminent domain, and wiping out thousands of trees and wildlife, and putting in a new highway. And people are fighting it. The city of Norman, we're officially opposed to it. I do not support it. And that's something that really creates a lot of passionate feelings from residents when you think about losing your home. And sometimes it's not something that can be replaced by money or just moving. Your great grandfather or something might have built that, or maybe you and your dad built the house together, you and your mom or whatever, and they passed away. And so that there's no amount of money that can replace that. Um, And so, and then if you got some acreages and that gets taken from you, it's going to be hard to relocate and find that same amount of space for that amount of money. And so anyway, you're dealing with things like that on a constant basis, or dealing with homelessness, like I said about the shelter, and all the factors that go into why there is homelessness in the United States, in a country like this. And what are the causes of it, and then what are we supposed to do about it. Stirs up a lot of feelings with people, for and against it. And so and then most people, yeah, you have a neighborhood and there's an empty field next to it, and most people feel like they want that field to stay an empty field forever. And that isn't unreasonable. But uh, whoever owns that field may want to do something with it. They may want to build something on it, and then the neighborhood comes and protests, or they want a brick masonry wall in between. They want the lights to face away. They want it to be a certain color. I mean, different things like that are what we deal with very often, and that can definitely be complicated when there's a lot of different opinions. And so really just me have just the experience over the years working with so many different people on the council and just in the community. And that's been what's been most helpful for me, is just experience, and then being willing to meet with people where they're at, and not always expecting people to come down to City Hall and go to a meeting, but maybe I need to go to their part of town and have coffee in their neighborhood, or come to their house if we need to and visit with them there on the front porch. But that's how I've really done it, and that's been the most benefit to me, is just doing it that way.
I love it. Or maybe get on one of their podcasts.
Yeah, I've
Mayor
been on
Holman,
quite a
I,
few.
I so appreciate you being a part of the show and taking time to even speak with our audience. I'm excited for people to hear more about your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you so much. I'm excited that you're doing this, and I'm happy to come on anytime you need.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnptulsa.com. That's gnptulsa.com, or call 918-301-6356.